This is now the 6th part from the book Freedom of the Known from Krishnamurti. Feel free to put your headphones inside of your ear because it is a ASMR high quality recording and you will hear the sound with a crystal clear atmosphere. RSMR Katz. One of the functions of thought is to be occupied all the time with something. Most of us want to have our minds continually occupied, so that we are prevented from seeing ourselves as we actually are. We are afraid to be empty. We are afraid to look at our fears. Consciously, you can be aware of your fears, but at the deeper levels of your mind, are you aware of them? And how are you going to find out the fears that are hidden secret? Is fear to be divided into the conscious and the subconscious? This is a very important question. The specialist, the psychologist, the analyst have divided fear into deep and superficial layers. But if you follow what the psychologist says, or what I say, you are understanding our various or dogmas, our knowledge. You are not understanding yourself. You cannot understand yourself according to Freud or Jung, or according to me. Other people's theories have no importance whatever. It is of yourself that you must ask the question, is fear to be divided into conscious and subconscious? Or is there only fear which you translate into different forms? There is only one desire. There is only desire. You desire. The objects of desire change, but desire is always the same. So perhaps in the same way there is only fear. You are afraid of all sorts of things, but there's only one fear. When you realize that fear cannot be divided, you will see that you have put away altogether this problem of subconscious, and so have cheated the psychologist and the analysts. When you understand that fear is a single movement which expresses itself in different ways, and when you see the movement and not the object to which the movement goes, then you are facing an immense question. How can you look at it without the fragmentation which the mind has cultivated? There is only total fear. But how can the mind, which thinks in fragments, observe this picture? Can it? We have lived a life of fragmentation and can look at that total fear only through fragmental process of thought. The whole process of the machinery of thinking is to break up everything into fragments. I love you and I hate you. You are my enemy. You are my friend. My peculiar idiosyncrasies and inclinations. My job, my position, my prestige, my wife, my child, my country and your country, my God and your God. All that is the fragmentation of thought. And this thought looks at the total state of fear, or tries to look at it and reduce it to fragments. Therefore, we see that the mind can look at this total fear only when there is no movement of thought. Can you watch fear without any conclusion, without any interference of the knowledge you have accomplished about it? If you cannot, then what you are watching is the past, not fear. If you can, then you are watching fear for the first time without the interference of the past. You can watch only when the mind is very quiet, just as you can listen to what someone is saying only when your mind is not chattering with itself, carrying on a dialogue with itself about its own problems and anxieties. Can you, in the same way, look at your fear without trying to resolve it, without bringing its opposite, courage? Actually, look at it and not try to escape from it. When you say, I must control it, I must get rid of it, I must understand it, you are trying to escape from it. You can observe a cloud or a tree or the movement of a river with a fairly quiet mind, because they are not very important to you. But to watch yourself is far more difficult because their demands are so practical, the action so quick. So when you are directly in contact with fear or despair, loneliness or jealousy, or any other ugly state of mind, you are able to look at it so completely that your mind is quiet enough to see it. Can the mind previous fear and not the different forms of fear perceive total fear, not what you're afraid of? If you look merely at the details of fear or try to deal with your fears one by one, you will never come to the central issue, which is to learn to live with fear. To live with a living thing such as fear requires a mind and heart that are extraordinarily subtle, that have no conclusion and can therefore follow every movement of fear. Then if you observe and live with it, and this doesn't take a whole day, it can take a minute or a second to know the whole nature of fear. If you live with it so completely, you inevitably ask, who is the entity who is living with fear? Who is it who is observing fear? Watching all the movements of the various forms of fear, as well as being aware of the central fact of fear. Is the observer a dead entity, a static being who has accumulated a lot of knowledge and information about himself? And is it that dead thing who is observing and living with the movement of fear? Is the observer the past, or is he living the thing? What is your answer? Do not answer me, answer yourself. Are you the observer, a dead entity, watching a living thing, or are you a living thing watching a living thing? Because in the observe, the two states exist. The observer is a censor who does not want fear. The observer is the totality of all his experience about fear. So obsersive is separate from that thing he calls fear. There is space between them. He is forever trying to overcome it or escape from it, and hence this constant battle between himself and fear. This battle, which is such a waste of energy. As you watch, you learn that the obversive is merely a bundle of ideas and memories, without any validity or substance. But that fear is in actually, and that you are trying to understand. A fact with an abstraction which of course you cannot do, but in fact is theirs observe who says, I am afraid. Any different from the things observed, which is fear? The observer is fear, and when that is realized, there is no longer any disappointment of energy in the effort to get rid of fear. And the time-space interval between the observer and the observed disappears when you see that you are part of fear, not separate from it, that you are fear. Then you cannot do anything about it. Then fear comes totally to an end. Violence, anger, justification, and condemnation. The idea and the actual. Fear, pleasure, sorrow. Thought and violence are interrelated. Most of us take pleasure in violence, in disliking somebody, hating a particular race or group of people, having antagonists, feelings towards others. But in a state of mind in which all violence has come to an end, there is a joy which is very different from the pleasure of violence with its conflicts, hatreds, and fears. Can we go to the very root of violence and be free from it? Otherwise, we shall live everlastingly in a battle with each other. If that is the way you want to live, and apparently most people do, then carry on. If you say, well, I'm sorry, violence can never end, then you and I have no means of communication. You have blocked yourself. But if you say there might be a different way of living, then we shall be able to communicate with each other. So let us consider together those of us who can communicate whether it is at all possible totally to end every form of violence in ourselves and still live in this monstrous, brutal world. I think it is possible. I don't want to have a breath of hate, jealousy, anxiety, or fear in me. I want to live completely at peace, which doesn't mean that I want to die. I want to live on this marvelous earth, so full, so rich, so beautiful. I want to look at the trees, flowers, rivers, meadows, women, boys, and girls, and at the same time live completely at peace with myself and with the world. What can I do? If we know how to look at violence, not only outwardly in society, the wars, the riots, the national engagements, and class conflicts, but also in ourselves, then perhaps we shall be able to go beyond it. Here is a very complex problem. For centuries upon centuries, man has been violent. Religions have tried to tame him throughout the world, and none of them have succeeded. So if we are going into the question we must, it seems to me, be at least very serious about it, because it will lead us into a quite of different domain. But if we want merely to play, with a problem for intellectual. Entertainment we shall not get very far. You may feel that you deserve yourself are very serious about the problem, but that as long as so many other people in the world are not serious and are not prepared to do anything about it, what is the good of you doing anything? I don't care whether they take it seriously or not. I take it seriously, and that is enough. I am not my brother's keeper. I, myself as human being, feel very strongly about the question of violence, and I will see to it that in myself I am not violent. But I cannot tell you or anybody else, don't be violent. It has no meaning unless you yourself want it. So if you yourself really want to understand this problem of violence, let us continue on our journey of exploration together. In this problem of violence out there or here, do you want to solve the problem in the outside world, or are you questioning violence itself as it is in you? If you are free of violence in yourself, the questions arise. How am I to live in a world full of violence, acquisitiveness, greed, envy, and brutality? Will I not be destroyed? That is the inevitable question which is invariably asked. When you ask such a question, it seems to me you are not actually living peacefully. If you live peacefully, you will have no problem at all. You may be imprisoned because you refuse to join the army or shot because you refuse to fight. But that is not the problem. You will be shot. It is extraordinarily important to understand this. We are trying to understand violence as a fact, not as an idea, as a fact which exists in the human being, and the human being is myself. And to go into problem, I must be completely vulnerable, open to it. I must expose myself to myself, not necessarily expose myself to you because you may not be interested, but I must be in a state of mind that demands to see the thing right to the end, at no point stops and says, I will go no further. Now, it must be obvious to me that I am a violent human being. I have experienced violence in anger, violence in my sexual demons, violence in hatred, creating enmity, violence in jealousy, and so on. I have experienced it. I have known it. And I say to myself, I want to understand the whole problem, not just one fragment of it, expressed in a war. But this aggression in men, which also exists in the animals and of which I am part. Violence is not merely killing another. It is violence when we use sharp words, when we make a gesture to brush away a person, when we obey because there is fear. So violence isn't merely organized butchery in the name of God, in the name of society or country. Violence is much more subtle, much deeper, and we are inquiring into the very depths of violence. When you call yourself an Indian or a Muslim or a Christian or you're European or anything else, you are being violent. Do you see why it is violent? Because you are separating yourself from the rest of mankind. When you separate yourself by belief, by nationality, by tradition, it breeds violence. So a man who is seeking to understand violence does not belong to any country, to any religion, to any political party or partial system. He is concerned with the total understanding of mankind. Now, there are two primary schools of thought with regard to violence. One which says violence is innate in man, and the other which says violence is the result of the social and cultural heritage in which man lives. We are not concerned with which school we belong to. It is of no importance. What is important is the fact that we are violent, not the reason for it. One of the most common expressions of violence is anger. When my wife or sister is attacked, I say, I am righteously angry. When my country is attacked, my ideas, my principle, my way of life, I am righteously angry. I am also angry when my habits are attacked or my petty little opinions. When you treat on my toes or insult me, I get angry. Or if you run away with my wife and I get jealous, that jealousy is called righteous because she is my property. And all this anger is morally justified. But to kill for my country is also justified. So when we are talking about anger, which is a part of violence, do we look at anger in terms of righteous and unrighteous, or anger to our own inclinations and environmental drive? Or do we see only anger? Is there righteous anger ever? Or is there only anger? There is no good influence or bad influence, only influence, but when you are influenced by something which doesn't suit me, I call it an evil influence. The moment you protect your family, your country, a bit colored red, call it a flag, a belief, an idea, a dogma, the thing that you demand or that you hold, that very protecting indicates anger. So you can look at anger without any explanation or justification, without saying, I must protect my goods, or I was right to be angry, or how stupid of me to be angry. Can you look at the anger as if it is worth something by itself? Can you look at it completely objectively, which means neither defending it or condemning it? Can you? Can I look at you if I'm antagonist to you, or if I am thinking what a marvelous person you are? I can see you only when I look at you with a certain care in which neither of these things is involved. Now, can I look at anger in the same way, which means that I am vulnerable to be the problem? I do not resist it. I am watching this extraordinary phenomenon without any reaction to it. This was part 6 from the book Freedom from the Known from Jiddu Krishnamurti. I will read in different parts the completely book for you, and at some point I will as well upload the full book in once. But I just can recommend you to listen to the book after part, because this is a very philosophical book, and it have a lot of questions you only can ask yourself and answer yourself. And for this book, you need time to progress, and it will lead you through a key where you can open a door with you might never have opened before. And for that you have to be aware of, and you have to be focused on, to understand and to be able to understand this book. So feel free, when you don't understand something, to come at another point again to this channel and click on the part again and listen to it again, because it is a very, very intense and helpful book. And you can learn a lot of things in it. I am a tattoo girl and my name is ASMR Katz. I love to take you on the adventure of sounds. With the help of different triggers and tingles, I show you my world of ASMR. If you already like this click, feel free to comment here under this video why. And I am happy about every interaction that I know, what especially I can do in the future. When you have any ideas or wishes, let me know. I try to keep track and answer on all of your comments because I love interaction on my page. As well, feel free to subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell. Because every Wednesday and every Sunday I will upload a new ASMR clip. And all my ASMR clips are different. So for sure, I like to read books who triggers you, but I also like to make mukbang where I eat food. I like to make ASMR with different kind of sounds you might never recognize before. I like to make motivational ASMRs when I drink with you a coffee or make myself ready in the morning or go to bed. I like to show you different variety of ASMR, and I am more than happy that you follow me on my journey here. I am more than happy to have you here around and have the opportunity to do what I like and to have this kind of amazing fun and enjoyable time. I also have a sequence where I read Dr. Seuss books. They are absolutely different, but in somehow they also are the same, because even when they are in child books, they also have a deep message when you read them in between the lines. It is the same book with this from Krishnamurti, but in a very different way. So even when you are not like this kind of ASMR, I have a lot in stock for you to go on the journey with me in several ways. It doesn't matter if you get in a positive way triggered from it, if you just relax and enjoy, or you feel like motivated and can start better in the day, if you are tired or if you are restless. I try with the medium of ASMR to give you an amazing experience with the best crystal clear sound, to just explore with me together the medium of ASMR. So I hope I see you the next time here around to the next video clip, and I hope you enjoy it the same as I enjoy to do ASMR clips for you.